You don't need to hire a team or an assistant to scale your business. Here's how I prevented a lawyer from needing to hire a team by automating her operations, so now she can easily manage her growing client list on her own. I'm Courtney 𝗪𝗧𝗥𝗍, a tech and automation specialist who helps service providers build thriving businesses while reclaiming their time. If you're tired of dealing with the headache and overhead of managing a team, this video is for you. I'll walk you through a real-life example of automations I built for a lawyer to streamline her intake process, consultation bookings, file organization, and recurring payments. I'll cover the strategy, the tech stack, and the challenges of this project, and then I'll give you a peek of the final setup in Zapier. Let's start with the primary objective of this project. My client is a successful solo lawyer who is experiencing significant growth in her practice. She wanted to capitalize on this momentum and scale her business while maintaining control over client service quality and operational efficiency. Rather than hiring additional staff she had to manage, she recognized that investing in automation to streamline her administrative tasks was the best way to achieve sustainable growth. Our strategy focused on three critical areas of her operations: client intake, consultation bookings, and payment processing. By automating these processes, we aim to free up her time, allowing her to focus on serving clients and growing her practice. For each area, we identified specific automations that would provide the most significant time savings for her investment. For client intake, she wanted to automate the process of adding clients to her 𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪 newsletter list when they opt in on her intake form. Up until this point, she had been manually adding them, which was a very time-consuming and error-prone process. She also wanted her paid consultation booking process to be completely automated, because she books these very frequently. She already had a Calendly booking page set up to collect payments and allow people to schedule, but then she was having to manually send a confirmation email, create and send the agreement through DocuSign, upload the signed agreement to the client folder in OneDrive, and create a notes file for the client. Automating these steps would make the process entirely hands-off for her while ensuring a seamless booking experience for her clients. And for her subscription-based legal services, she wanted to automate the setup of recurring monthly charges made to clients and the collection of those payment methods. It was crucial that all of her clients' card and bank information be collected and stored securely, while giving her the ability to manage all of the recurring charges in one dashboard. My solution for this project was to build the automations in Zapier. The best part is that we were able to build them using the tools already in her tech stack: 𝗪𝗪𝗧 for her newsletter, OneDrive for file management, DocuSign for digital signatures, Calendly for scheduling, LawPay for payment processing, Practice Panther as the central CRM and case management system, and finally Zapier as the integration platform connecting everything together. Leveraging these tools for the automations meant that we could minimize additional software subscription costs, and she didn't need to do a major overhaul of her systems or change her processes in any way. She could just continue doing her normal processes as she usually does. As a result of these automations, she now has more freedom and time to focus on scaling her business and serving clients, all while maintaining high-quality service without the need to hire additional staff. Now let's review the strategy and the approach to this automation. I always start my projects by diagramming the process and how it's going to be automated. So let's begin with the client intake. This one was pretty simple. Once a client or a prospect submits her intake form, the automation will check the checkbox that indicates that they'd like to opt in to her newsletter. If so, then it will go ahead and add them to her newsletter, which she uses 𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪. For her consultation booking, it always starts out with a booking through Calendly, which will accept payment in return for the booking. Then the automation will send a confirmation email that includes a list of next steps, and it will send a consultation agreement through DocuSign. Once the DocuSign agreement is signed, it will create a folder for the client in her OneDrive account. Then it will upload that signed agreement to her OneDrive folder that was just created. And if that folder already exists, it will find that. And then here it is going to create a notes file for my client to be able to take notes during the consultation call. Now, first it needs to check whether a notes file already exists. Maybe this is a repeat client who has scheduled multiple consultations before. We wouldn't want to create duplicate notes file. It would want to check whether it already exists or not. So it's going to check the list of files that are already in the folder, and if the file is already there, it will not proceed Otherwise, it is going to copy a template notes file to the client folder. Now, for the subscription, it's going to begin with a few manual steps because my client wants to be able to control this part of the process. Usually, it will start with either a consultation that turns into her monthly subscription service, or someone will submit her intake form. Once she identifies that a client is going to sign up for her subscription service, she will send them an email, and then she will also create a case for them in her case management system, 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪, and she will put the option type in the name of the case. Now, she has two different service levels for her subscription service. Option 1 is a little cheaper and it doesn't have quite as many benefits, whereas option 2 is the more premium option. So in order to distinguish between them, she needs to be able to name them in the case so that the automation can pull that information. Then she will manually send a subscription retainer agreement, which I created a template for her in DocuSign, so that makes the process super easy. She just needs to put in their legal business name and the date when the subscription service will end, which will usually be about 1 year. Now, once the client signs the subscription agreement, the automation will go ahead and create a contact for them in LawPay, her payment processing system. Then it will send an info request to the client via email, and this will be an email requesting either their credit card information or their bank information to be stored securely in the LawPay system. Once they provide that information, the automation will go ahead and retrieve that subscription option number from 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪, which she is storing in the case name. Then it will calculate the subscription amount based on the option type that they have selected, and it will charge the first installment for the current month. And after that, it will set up a monthly recurring charge that will charge them every month automatically, so the client does not need to initiate that process. It will just be auto-debited from their account. Now, let's take a look at the final setup in Zapier. This is for the first automation when the intake form is submitted. Now, this step down here is where it is looking up the checkbox field in the intake form to check whether they have opted into the newsletter, and if so, it will filter on that condition and then add them to her newsletter in Bravo. Now, the challenge with this particular automation is that it's actually not triggering on when the intake form is submitted. It is triggering on when a contact is created in 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪, and that's because she built her intake form through her case management system. And so because of that, there isn't a trigger available for when a form is submitted. The only trigger available is when a new contact is created. Now, the intake form is set up so that when it's filled out, it automatically creates a contact in 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. But the problem is that the field that we needed for that checkbox wasn't initially available in the trigger data, and that's because it wasn't mapped to a contact field. So to fix that issue, we had to map that particular field in the form to a custom field, which is now showing up in the trigger data. So that is how we solved that issue. Now, after this triggers, it will send an email just to confirm to the client that the intake form was received. And then this is the step where it will look up the newsletter custom field in order to check whether it's been checked, and then it will add them to her Bravo newsletter. The next automation is when a consultation is scheduled through her Calendly. So it will filter on whether a certain event has been scheduled, and then it will send a confirmation email with next steps, and then it'll create and send the DocuSign signature request for them to sign the agreement. Once they sign, it will get their first and last name from the signer field. It will create a folder for them in OneDrive based on their last name. It will upload the signed agreement to that OneDrive folder that was just created. And then this is where it's going to check to see what files are in the folder. And if it doesn't contain the notes file, then it will copy a template notes file into the folder. Now, the challenge with this automation is that this notes file that she uses is actually a Mac-specific file type. It's a .pages. There isn't a way to just create a blank file with that file extension, and my client specifically wanted the pages file because that is how she takes notes on her Mac. So the workaround is, instead of creating a blank file, we just copied a file, and so that's how we were able to work around that challenge. Now, the other challenge with this automation is the naming consistency of the client folders. This automation will automatically create and search for folders based on the client's last name, but occasionally my client will change the name of the folder to the business name. So that can cause some potential issues with duplicate folders being created for the same client if she were to change the name of the folder and then they were to later sign up for a consultation, then that folder would not be located because the name was changed. So that's one potential issue to just watch out for when you're building automations like this. Naming consistency is very important, and I recommend having some kind of naming convention when you're designing your automations, and make sure to try to stick to it as much as you can, and just be aware that if you don't stick to the naming convention, that it could cause duplicates or just strange behavior with your automations that you don't expect. So now the last automation is her subscription one. It begins with these manual steps, but once it's signed, it will filter on whether the agreement is specifically for the subscription service. It will grab their first name, last name, and it will create a contact for them in 𝗪𝗡𝗧. Then it will send an info request to the email that was used in this signature request. Then, once they submit their payment information, it will create a new payment method in EffinipPay. So 𝗪𝗡𝗧 uses EffinipPay under the hood. And I actually created this trigger as a custom integration in Zapier because there wasn't a trigger that was available with the standard integration. And so by having this available, we are now able to trigger on as soon as that payment information is provided to my client. Then it can find the contact in her Practice Panther legal software, and then it will find the case matter that is associated with this subscription service in order to retrieve the option number. Then it is going to calculate the payment amount based on that option type. It will create that one-time charge, and then 1 month later, it will begin the next recurring charge. And from that point, the recurring charge will happen every month. Now, the reason we needed to have this one-time charge immediately is because the API doesn't allow us to set up a recurring charge that begins the day it was set up. So as a workaround, we just do a one-time charge for the current month, and then we have the recurring charge starting 1 month later. Now, the other challenge with this automation was having a way for the automation to pull the subscription type between these two zaps. Now, ideally, we would have been able to store that subscription option as a field with the 𝗪𝗡𝗧 contact. Unfortunately, that wasn't an option because in this action in Zapier, we do not have the ability to put any kind of extra field or note about the option type. So the workaround was to store that information in her case management software instead, which is where it will retrieve it in this zap right here. So that is why this step was necessary. I hope this video has been insightful for those of you looking to scale your firm without expanding your team. As demonstrated by my client, it's entirely possible to grow your practice while maintaining a solo operation, if that's your goal. You just need a strategic approach to automation and a willingness to invest in streamlining your processes. If you're interested in implementing similar automations to streamline your operations and free up valuable time, I invite you to book a free consultation call with me. You'll find the booking link in the description below. During our call, we can discuss your specific needs and how automation can help your practice thrive. And if you have any questions about the setup that I showed in this video, feel free to leave your questions in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them.